What's good, everyone? My name is Jacob Moses, and welcome to another episode of the Not Boring Tech Writer, where in each episode we focus on a different skill that you can learn to enhance your skill set, improve your marketability, diversify your career, and ultimately break the stereotype that technical writing is a boring career. This episode's skill: contributing to GitHub. As tech writers consider how to stay relevant in the field, many look to GitHub, the Git repository service where people host their open source projects, allowing others to contribute as well. And understandably so, as the demand for tech writers specialized in developer documentation grows, GitHub gives tech writers low-lift opportunities to ramp up their skills. That's why in this episode we have Tad Dieken on the podcast, two-time guest on the Not Boring Tech Writer and tech writer at Accuray, who recently completed a week straight of GitHub contributions, ranging from creating onboarding guides for new tech writers to translation. In this episode, Tad shares how to get started contributing to GitHub, including how to find projects that interest you, how to overcome imposter syndrome in GitHub, and which skills you may learn in the process. Big shout out to Knowledge Owl, a wonderful knowledge-based software product, for sponsoring the Not Boring Tech Writer. And lastly, if you or a friend are looking for a new tech writing gig, I got a message from Red Balloons. Do you know a tech writer who's passionate about customer service and would be interested in a role in San Francisco? If so, Red Balloons is offering a $2,000 referral bonus. All you need to do is go to redballoons.co/techwriter and refer someone or share your personalized link. Redballoons.co is a new recruiting platform that connects amazing people with great companies and rewards you for helping out. For more information, go to redballoons.co/techwriter. Thanks, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Tad, what's good, man? How are you today?
Hey, pretty good, Jacob. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. What's going down in Madison? Is it
Uh,
chilly? It kind of feels like chilly season, perhaps, up there.
it's starting to get a little bit chilly. It's definitely that part of the year where it's overall starting to get more temperate and chilly, which is nice, but it's sort of, I don't know. It's like it's classic Midwest weather. Like it isn't quite sure what it's doing. Like sometimes we'll have like 40-degree weather, and then the next day it'll be like 60s, 70s. But overall, it's pretty good.
That's nice, man. I like repping like the short and the windbreaker combo.
Oh yeah,
Whenever
for
you get
sure.
that in
It's a
between,
classic.
like I'm still feeling like kind of summery, but I'm gonna hit you with that windbreaker.
Oh,
It's
nice.
nice.
How's the weather in Texas?
It's nice, man. It's rainy and chilly today. I had to dip out pretty early on the scooter to get some groceries because we're expecting rain all throughout the rest of the afternoon.
Ooh,
But
nice.
besides that, man, chilling.
Oh,
Love to
very
be
cool.
chatting with you again. Second time on the podcast. I
Yes,
think the
yeah,
first
it's
one
great to be back.
was it excelling? What did we discuss? I think it was landing your first tech writing job or excelling at your first job.
Yes, yeah, it was getting your first job in technical writing.
Awesome. And you've really, I'm going to say, growing up, of course, you've aged since we've last spoken,
Oh
but
yeah.
just from the work that I've followed of yours on LinkedIn, it seems like you're really getting into the weeds of tech writing, picking up a lot of new skills, which brings us to today's topic, and that is contributing to GitHub. I saw there was a recent LinkedIn post of yours where you shared that you just knocked out your first week straight of GitHub contributions, which is really impressive. And I imagine for the tech writer who may be a little intimidated by GitHub and working in open source projects, likely inspiring for them as well to see, hey, like here's like a fairly new tech writer, maybe around my age, um, getting into GitHub and doing some great work. For folk who maybe aren't familiar with GitHub, do most of their work in end user documentation, before we dive into all the great work you did, how would you define GitHub for folk who may not be aware?
GitHub is like an open source community where lots of people are working on their own either individual or professional projects. But
Hmm.
the open source aspect means that anybody is able to contribute to the project. So you can uh, create a fork off of different projects that you might find that you're interested in, and create your own changes that you think would be necessary for this document, and then you can send it back to the people that own the specific project themselves, and they, give you feedback. They see what it was about your changes that you were trying to accomplish with it, if that matches with what they're trying to do. But yeah, it's sort of just a way for people from all over the world to contribute to different software and IT projects.
That's awesome, Tad. That's a great definition. Give me an example of the type of projects that you see in GitHub. Is this mostly like side projects for developers, like say, their day job, they're a programmer, but they're interested in creating such and such product, so they get into GitHub? Are we seeing actual professional products in here? What have you seen from your experience?
It's a good combination of both, honestly. That's the thing that I found really interesting about it. My first time where I really fully dove straight into GitHub was whenever I was at the Write the Docs conference back in May over in Portland, and there was a specific writing day where there was a booth with the documentation team from Microsoft Azure, I think is how you pronounce it. It's
Cool.
Azure. But they were seeking out to make their documentation more inclusive. So there were a bunch of examples in the documentation where perhaps things were unnecessarily gendered, or certain phrases might not make sense for other cultures. Perhaps it
Hmm.
was too ingrained in different colloquialisms or whatever it may be. But
Yeah.
so they gave us sort of a crash course in GitHub itself, how it functions. Getting people's accounts set up if they didn't already have one. But from
Cool.
there, it was a really cool sort of scaffolding opportunity to go through and have some people that professionally use GitHub for their documentation have us, help us help them for their projects that
Yeah.
they're working on. Uh, so yeah, so I see stuff from. I know Google's got a couple different projects for some of their stuff on side of or inside of GitHub. Microsoft got some documentation that's inside of there as well. I'm sure there's plenty of other professional organizations that also use it. But like you were saying as well, there's also tons of people that are doing some, coding side projects where, they come home at the end of the day. I guess they didn't have their fill of software engineering like on the job, so they want to keep doing it later into the hours. So they've got their own things that they're going through and working on, which is super cool and super awesome. So uh, yeah, it's really a combination of both. There's lots of side project stuff, but there is a fair amount of actual professional stuff as well. So it's a cool mishmash of experience.
And listeners, Tad mentioned Write the Docs. If you listen to, I guess, any other episode on this podcast, you've probably heard me say the same thing over and over. Fantastic organization. I'll include them in the show notes below. I just got to chat with Eric Holscher just
Oh
yesterday.
no way!
I was getting some advice from him. Where the organization I work for, Strong Towns, we're currently on the Strong America tour. Our president just released a book, and we have a 85 stop book tour
Whoa! Oh, that's
throughout the
awesome.
fall and fall, winter, and early
Oh, very
2020.
cool.
And I reached out to Eric and said, "Hey, like we're having a hard time converting our attendees into like engaged folk." And I know he does a fantastic job with this at Write the Docs. So got to have a nice little chat. So if listeners, if you aren't familiar with Write the Docs, totally recommend you check them out. And I'll include a link in the show notes below. So Tad, it sounds like from this past experience at Write the Docs this past May, really opened your eyes to where you as a tech writer fit into all this great work happening in GitHub. Was it this particular um, conversation you were having in regards to creating more inclusive docs that inspired you to knock out this week in GitHub contributions, or was it something that you've been pondering for a bit now and wanted to try out?
So it's the inclusive aspect was really awesome and really cool. And I do notice that, if I come across any projects that seem to have those sort of errors, I will, you know, uh, create a pull request to go through and try to make those sort of edits. But the big things that I've been working on recently is I just found that GitHub is a very cool tool, and I've been trying to ensure that I'm getting more markdown experience because with my current employer, we do more FrameMaker XML authoring, and it's like PDF static output for our documentation. But so my interest is going through and getting more experience with um, more contemporary tools, I guess, that are being used in the
Yeah,
documentation space. So there are some certain processes within my current company that I just wanted to make sure that we're fully documented for any other technical writers that are coming in. So for my situation currently, I'm the only technical writer for my department. And so sort of the concern that I had is, if anything, like if I get struck by lightning tomorrow or something like that, then what's going to
yeah,
happen for getting a technical writer to come in and fill in my position? Because there's so much knowledge
yeah.
that I have that solely exists within me that other people within my
Mm.
department don't have. And so the main project that I've been working on inside of GitHub is developing this comprehensive technical communication guide that I've then sort of built into our department SharePoint page under tech comms section. So that way, hypothetically, if anything ever does happen and somebody else needs to come in, step in, or take over for my role, they have a actual more robust guide that they can go through and access for everything. Uh, but
That's
yeah, there's
cool,
that,
Tad.
and then uh, kind of going back to plugin Write the Docs as well. There's inside of the Write the Docs Slack channel, there is uh, another channel called, I believe, it's open source. It's the whole thing behind it is different documentarians or developers that are part of the Slack channel, whenever they come across any GitHub uh, projects that are in need of some documentarian work, they share a link to it inside of that channel. So it's a really great way if you're trying to
Nice.
find, any sort of side projects to uh, build up your portfolio or get more experience or whatever it may be. It's a really awesome resource that you can jump to where it's it's not just searching in GitHub and hoping to come across you know, documentation needs there, but rather it's more streamlined in that sense where people are saying, "Oh, here is a specific case." Where there is a need for a documentation overhaul with this project, so it's very, very useful.
That's awesome, Ted. Because I think I haven't worked much in GitHub myself, but I've been told that with some projects they'll have like is it a need
Yes.
docs?
Yeah, it'll be like documentation will be like a flag for it or something along those lines. I don't know if that verbatim is correct, but yes, exactly correct.
So I guess some people can look for that, but I'm with you. Like there's been times where I've searched to, because with myself, whenever I've tried to pursue different open source projects, like I have to start with something that interests me. Like if I just see that need docs flag, um, if it's something regarding like kitchen appliances, I'm not messing with the Tad. So I'll look for, maybe something in regards to like public transportation or some kind of like,
Yeah, for
I don't know,
sure.
open data thing with civic hacking. But I love that comment you made regarding this channel at the docs because this is a crew of documentarians, and it sounds like they're going to be sharing stuff that they're confident that their peers would be interested in working in.
Totally. And the cool part too is typically the people that share stuff on the open source channel, they're sharing it with specifically more towards people that don't have that much open source experience. So the skill level more
Oh,
often than
nice.
not is tailored towards people that are trying to build up this experience. So it's really awesome and cool and an awesome resource for people
Gotcha.
trying to build up their portfolio.
Give me an example of a few projects that you've seen
So
in that
one of
channel.
them
I'm
that
curious.
was shared over was for this project called Elastic Butler. I think
Uh-huh.
what happened with this one, it was more international software engineers that were working on it, but the documentation that they needed was in English. And so going through the documentation, uh, whenever I visited it, was a bunch of just like grammar edits, organization, formatting, like stuff like that. And
Sure.
uh, it's a really great jumping off point for people that might not be quite as technical with different programming
Yeah.
languages or whatever it may be, but they definitely find a space where they can contribute inside of that because anybody that's trying to be a professional documentarian, they probably have a good amount of experience with any sort of grammar or editing or formatting or whatever. And so that project specifically was a very cool thing where it's like, okay, cool. I don't know that much about this specific tool that's being offered, but I am an
Yeah.
expert in uh, crafting sentences that make more sense. So there's enough content that's here that I can form cohesive
Yeah.
ideas off of it. It's just making everything more understandable for the user or the developer that is coming across this documentation.
How does that feel as a fairly new tech writer, being able to get involved into what can be a very intimidating platform like GitHub and find these low lift ways that you can contribute to
It's
projects?
really cool. I think there is a fair amount of intimidation or the classic imposter syndrome that seems to run rampant amongst people in technical writing. But I think more than anything, it's just uh, always looking at everything as a learning experience and bringing a lot of a uh, a strong sense or desire to be enthusiastically learning about different things. And so uh, go through and give it a shot and try it out because the good part is intrinsically with GitHub, the people that control the master branch for it, they control uh, if your stuff is going to get implemented. So if anything was incorrect in what you were doing for it, it's not like you're going to ruin the project itself for it. There's checks and balances that are in place there, which is very cool.
Yeah. Nice little feedback loop. And listeners, if you're interested in learning more about GitHub, I don't recall the exact episode number, maybe number 12. But we had Kyle Taylor on the podcast. He's a open source expert, works a lot in Drupal. Another great podcast to look back to if you want to learn more about GitHub. And then I was peeping my LinkedIn yesterday morning, and Chad Sterling, another past guest of the Not Boring Tech Writer, posted that he had just completed a LinkedIn course called Learning GitHub. So I'll make sure to find those two links and plug them into the show notes as well if you're trying to get more into it. So, Tad, I imagine with GitHub or really any little side project that one has, maybe just kind of check on it now and then. Like I would empathize with you if you wanted to like mess with GitHub, like one random Saturday, let it be for a little bit, and mess with it the next month. Is there a particular reason why you chose just to knock out 7 straight days? Was there some value in having that consistency of contributions?
I think part, I think there's definitely something to be said for, uh, you know, uh, going through and putting in your own reps to
Yeah,
be more familiar with a tool. Uh, Whereas, other aspects of, uh, you can always get rusty if you're not visiting something
sure.
super often. I think for me, more than anything, there's that section of GitHub on your profile where it displays in green for all the different days that you were making contributions to different things.
Oh, this is on a
Uh,
profile of some sort?
yes, yeah. So if you go to
Gotcha.
your GitHub profile, I believe it's a standard feature, but or at least it shows up on mine. But there's yeah, it like goes through and shows all the days that you're making contributions. So for me, looking at it, it was like, oof, well, cool that the visual aspect of this sort of incentivizes me to go through and really keep track of everything that, or like how often I'm making contributions for it. It was
Yeah.
really funny.
Yeah.
The people from Microsoft at the Write the Docs conference told me that some people would go as far as like trying to spell out different words or like create different pictures inside of the graphic itself. So there are people that have spelled out like hello or yeah have made like different pictures by strategically making contributions on different days uh, to be
Goofy.
able to make that appear, which is just funny and ridiculous. But
What are you trying to do?
oh, I don't even
You
know.
go you gonna
I
create the Wisconsin Badger
oh
now that you're a
oh
math
yeah, I
teacher?
do love my Badgers,
That
but
sounds challenging.
I don't know. That'll be quite the task.
Yeah. Well, keep us updated on
We'll
that.
do.
We may have to have you on the podcast again to discuss whatever design you
Very
choose.
sweet, very
I'm
cool.
going to be following very closely, Ted. I'm curious. So, of course, you're a fantastic tech writer. You've been in the game for a few years now. You've been continually ramping up your skills. I always see you posting new things you learned on LinkedIn. I know you attended the Write the Docs conference this past May. Another great way to ramp up one's tech writing skills. From your time in GitHub, have you learned that taking the time to contribute to these open source projects um, has helped you develop any new skills that perhaps you didn't expect learning but have been valuable for you?
Oh, I definitely think so. There's this practice that's starting to become more and more ubiquitous within the IT sector of technical writing. It's this principle known as Docs as code that uh, I know that Google implemented it back in like 2015 or something like that, but you're starting to see it a lot more in different IT postings. And so essentially, like getting experience within a program like GitHub directly allows you to potentially develop more skill sets that are involved within these philosophies. So Docs as code is sort of this principle where the documentation is directly incorporated into the same place that the code that is being documented is stored. So in GitHub, for
Hmm.
example, that's like the repository that's there. So the code that's being used for the project is in that GitHub repository, and then the documentation that instructs the end user about the code itself is also in the same repository as the code itself. So getting
Gotcha.
experience within GitHub is sort of intrinsically a way to get more experience within these principles, which to a certain degree, somebody could possibly chalk it up to just being more familiar with the different jargon that's out there in the field. But I definitely think
Yeah.
it's a way to get your foot in the door and be familiar with something. It's definitely
Absolutely, Ted. And even just from that description you just made, I mean, I can totally tell that you likely have a really strong shared language
mhm.
with developers. And from developers I've spoken with, I mean, that's huge to be confident to go over, discuss a particular product or a particular language with a developer. It's a great skill to
Yeah,
have.
for sure.
Well, Tad, this has been a joy. Do you mind sharing, I don't know if they call it a name or uh, handle, whatever. Where can people find your GitHub work if people want to see some of these things that you
Sure.
described?
My GitHub is TADDIEKEN 95. But
Nice.
yeah, you'll see me contributing to random side projects that come up in Write the Docs, and then also on my own individual work projects. But yeah.
Cool. Well, I will include that in the show notes below. And when can we expect
Oof.
a design for
Let's.
your contribution list? Please
Oh
tell
man,
us
I'm
now so we
locked
can
in. Let's
revisit.
let's talk in 1 year from today. So October 24th, 2020.
Nice. Well, Tad, thank you, friend. This has been a joy. I'm going to include a lot of good stuff in the show notes, a few links where people can learn more about open source projects, learn more about GitHub, get involved in this Write the Docs Slack, specifically that open source channel, which sounds really valuable. Am I missing anything else?
I don't think
Do you
so. I
think we're
think that's
good?
pretty much everything.
And I'll include Tad's LinkedIn as well. I've enjoyed
Nice.
following you since we've connected. I guess, since a few months ago. You've been a good friend.
Yes.
Happy to
Awesome. Thanks for
chat.
having me on, Jacob.
Tad, thank you, friend. Enjoy the day. We'll talk soon.
You too.
Thanks again to Knowledge Owl, creators of the wonderful knowledge-based software, for sponsoring the Not Boring Tech Writer podcast. And lastly, if you or a friend are looking for a new tech writing gig, I got a message from Red Balloons. Do you know a tech writer who's passionate about customer service and would be interested in a role in San Francisco? If so, Red Balloons is offering a $2,000 referral bonus. All you need to do is go to redballoons.co/techwriter and refer someone or share your personalized link. Redballoons.co is a new recruiting platform that connects amazing people with great companies and rewards you for helping out. For more information, go to redballoons.co/techwriter. And thanks so much to each of you for listening to this episode. Talk soon.